Good.
I will
So
say
yeah.
whenever I have like a stressful moment where I'm like, oh, like I need to make money, I need to do this, and I like pause and I think about like what my ideal life would be. I I really feel like right now I'm living my ideal life. Like I live by the beach, I have a lot of friends, I'm close to my family, I'm able to do the things that I want to do, and I find my like business and like working in the writing space to be really exciting. And so I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm living my retired life. I just have to close the gap to finance it.
You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before Fire. Using fire and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to fire instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a fire movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this.
So hello, and thank you again for tuning in. I'm more than excited to have our guest on the pod today because we've got the lovely Michelle Varghese, and I think her family call her an internet celebrity. So a bit of a backstory. Michelle used to work in tech sales. She took the leap in 2021 to start her creative journey. She went on a long-term sabbatical, and then she started the Build a Wealthy Spirit podcast with her sister Sammie, which she done for 4 years straight, and has over 200 episodes. She's also got over 1,200 readers on Substack, where she writes about her journey, and she's also built an engaged audience of over 2,300 on X. And she now focuses on being a writing coach. So Michelle epitomizes the concept of intentional living and living a life aligned to your values, and it's why we wanted to get her on the show today. So Michelle, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I'm actually a listener of your show, and you must get this a lot. But people must say to you, "Oh, I feel like I know you because I listen to you, like you, and you're so like approachable and down to earth." Do you get that? You must get that a lot.
It's funny. I think after doing things like my podcast and writing for a while, and then a lot of the work, like freelance work I did was with like online courses. So I think I started to realize that like I would talk to people and they get kind of excited or they do like know things about me that I've like written about. And so yeah, it's a funny experience because I love podcasts, and one thing I realized is if you listen to say your favorite podcast every single week, that's like maybe half an hour, maybe more with somebody that you're like learning a lot about them pretty intimately. And I mean, that's more time than I spend with most of my friends. So, like, if you listen to my podcast, you have spent hours with me. So, we
Yeah,
are
that's
kind of
it.
close. So, yeah, I understand that feeling, but I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so just to start with, I know you're a big fan of the book Start Finishing by Charlie Gilkey, and I think he mentioned something on there like only stick with like 3 to 5 projects at a time, just so you don't get sort of overloaded. So for you, Michelle, what are your current 3 to 5 projects that's sort of keeping you going at the minute?
That's an interesting question. One that I've actually been reflecting on myself because I probably read that book, gosh, I want to say a couple years ago, but maybe like 3 years ago. But literally this last couple of days, I was like pulling it up again because it's one of my favorite productivity books, especially if you're somebody who has the tendency to take on a lot of projects and not finish them like I do. And one of his core principles, like you said, is that he basically will have you do this exercise in the book where you write down like everything you want to do, anything that takes time, energy, and money. So, not just projects like your work, but also, for example, I was traveling recently a lot for weddings and I had to go to a family event. So, he would be like, okay, that's a project. You're doing that all weekend, you're putting money into it, it takes a lot of energy. And so, he'll like have you look at a 3 month span and think about like, what are you focused on? So I was going through that recently because I was traveling a lot, but I've kind of wanted to focus a little bit more on my business that I'm growing. And so one of my major projects is writing coaching. And so I have been, if people are familiar, in the past for a couple of years, I worked with David Perel's Rite of Passage. I was freelancing for them and doing mentorship, editing, and working with people who are launching their writing online. And I really enjoyed that experience. And when they ended up shutting down, I actually ended up switching to writing coaching. Somebody in the course that I had worked with had asked me if I'd be open to it. And I basically was like, well, let me see if anyone else would be interested in this too. For whatever reason, it hadn't been on my radar. And so about 6 or 7 months ago, I started writing coaching. And that has been a really cool project for me and a big part of my focus. I was freelancing for the last couple of years, but within the last, probably since April, I've actually been just working for myself. And I would say entrepreneurship in general is like 3 projects in itself, because I'm focused on like actually delivering to my like coachees that I work with. I'm realizing, are also the person who's doing marketing, and you're also the person who's doing invoicing and accounting, and you're the CEO. And so I would say a big project for me has been the writing coaching. And I'm sort of in a stage where I'm excited about taking some of the things I've learned and turning that into sort of the next season for myself. So that's a big one. I think spending time with my friends and family, both online and in like person. So that's been an interesting balance, because now I live in a real city and I've made a lot of friends, but obviously that also takes a lot of time and energy. And I would probably put those 2 as my top ones. Traveling, I think, was a big one because I just traveled a lot in the last few months, but that's sort of slowing down, and I'm hoping to fill that time with work, basically.
Amazing. And we'll get on to the writing a bit later on, but I'm just really curious. When you started your creative journey, did you ever think you'd be like a writing coach before, or was it quite a bit of a surprise to you yourself as well?
Oh my gosh, of course, it's totally a surprise. I would say, like anybody who's thinking about taking a sabbatical or taking time off, one of the things I always tell people who ask me about it is to not try to put a bunch of expectations on it. I think probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast are people who are, type A, ambitious, hardworking. If you're the type of person who's into financial independence, that takes a lot of like spreadsheets and numbers and figuring out like how do you get out of the corporate world. And that you're already somebody like even in your spare time doing a lot of thinking and working. And I did like an experimental sabbatical course with one of my friends online like a couple of years ago, and it was so interesting because like the students, you see people come in and they have such a specific idea of how things should go, and they have like 1,000 things on their list, and at the same time they're tired, and some of them had gotten laid off, so they're kind of need to take like a mental health break and all of these type of things. So all that to say, like when I started my sabbatical, I partially just needed a break. And so it wasn't like I like went in right away into like creative projects. I did soon after start a podcast with my sister, but I think that's partially because like having somebody else made it really easy to start and be consistent with a project. But I don't think I started writing until probably 2 years later. And yeah, at the time I was just taking the writing course that I had mentioned, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to work for them, but maybe that'll be something down the line. I don't know. One thing happens, and next thing you know, you're like kind of an expert in something new. And yeah, it was totally unexpected. So I would say that if you're somebody who's taking a break, especially if it ends up being an extended one, be open to the possibility like the thing that you want when you leave is not the thing that you'll want when you end your sabbatical.
Nice, yeah. And I like how you're in sort of different spheres. You're in this sort of content space, writing space, but you're also in the sort of FI space as well, isn't it? You're also in that. So just on going into the FI space, could you tell us about, what's your like current stage in FI and what's your like overall goal?
Yeah, it's funny how much it's changed. So when I left my job, I was getting more and more into financial independence. So, for some background, my sister got into FIRE when one of our friends mentioned it offhand to her, probably in like 2016 or 2017. And Sammie, my sister, got really into it, and I started to learn about it sort of on the side through her learnings. So I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Okay, we went to FI meetings in the Bay Area, which is where I was living at the time. And so I was getting a lot of exposure to it. And I was like, yeah, this is really interesting. But it didn't really matter to me until I was actually considering leaving my job, because that's when all of a sudden it's important. And I was like, what are those numbers again? What's the 4% rule? Like, how do I, you know, what does it mean to like live off my own money? Like, how can I invest it smartly? And so when I started my sabbatical, that was about 5 years ago. And so the first 2 years, I didn't work at all. And so at that point, I was probably 0% FIRE because I was taking money out of my account, but not, working, not putting anything in. Though it's hard to say because I had moved in with my parents and then I moved into a really small town. So my expenses were really low. And this was like kind of the COVID era, like 2021, 2022. So I just like my expenses like really, really dropped. So for a while there, like if you actually look at the calculations, it's taking a look at how much money you're spending and looking at your investments. And so in theory, if I had changed nothing, I probably could have been FIRE because my expenses were just so low. But I was living in a small town. I wasn't that excited about staying there forever. And I didn't want to necessarily give up the things that I wanted to be financially independent. I'm glad for those experiences, but I would happily increase my spending. I moved to a little bit of a bigger city. And I would say at that time, I sort of moved into Coast Fi. So if I had continued to continuously pay off my bills, then, and I didn't touch my like retirement or my investments, then I would be basically good to go in terms of being FIRE. The thing is, my expenses have still gone up a little bit, and now I'm in like the beginning stages of entrepreneurship. And so I've sort of been going in that back and forth of like, okay, well, I could go to a full-time job, or I could make more money right off the bat and like continue to be coast fi. But I think at this point, I'm less interested in the like retirement aspect. Like I have like a certain number in my head that like, okay, like I want to make sure I don't go below a certain amount in my investments because I just want to continue to have that wheel moving. But I'm actually okay like selling investments if I need to like support myself, to help myself, because I am building a business and it just takes time to do that. It's harder to be like net positive consistently. So I would say like a couple years ago, especially when I was living in a small town, I really felt like I was coast fi. But because you like change the spending amount, it changes whether or not you're FIRE. And to keep in mind too, like I'm currently, I'm not married, I don't have children, and that those are things that I do want in my future, and so that would change my FI number as well. So, long story short, I would say right now I'm not pacing to FI because I'm putting more money into my business than I am into my investments. I have enough like moving, and I think I can course correct that pretty soon. But I have like actively decided to make that trade off because I think I'll be okay in retirement. And I think what my sabbatical taught me was being able to take these breaks and being able to do the things I want to do today is a little bit more important to me. But it's also nice to have like a little bit of a nest egg so that I don't have to actually like worry that I'm like blowing up my life to do any of these things.
Nice. And what are you kind of investing at the moment? Like, what's your portfolio strategy? Is it sort of stocks, or you bought some property, or what is
Yeah,
that strategy?
I think it's basically all stocks at this point. And it's like your index funds, like the VT,
Is it
AX, VTX.
VTSAX? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those type of things. I do have money in like my retirement account, my 401k, and I think it's entirely stocks. Stocks and cash. I haven't had too much of an interest to go into the real estate route. I almost think like my real estate money I like used as like sabbatical money. And I don't have any bonds right now. I don't have No crypto. It's basically all stocks, and basically at
very
this point I
similar.
think it's all index funds. I dabbled with the single stocks at different points in my life and have learned very quickly that that is not a great idea. So I think it's essentially all index funds at this point.
Oh, amazing. And in terms of like, your sort of living expenses, are you able to share like what that is and how you're able to fund that? Is that all from like your business, from your entrepreneurship, or you got other sort of streams of income coming in, and
Yeah, my
how you're able to
expenses.
afford like this sort of creative journey that you're on?
Yeah. It depends. Is like the short answer. I'll like look out, let's say like on a 3-year window. So right now, I kind of like conservatively put my monthly like total spend at about 4 grand. It can hopefully go under that, but if I'm like traveling a lot or something, that's kind of like the higher watermark. My like actual expenses, like the things that I have to pay every month are closer to like 1,300. That includes like my housing, internet, water, those type of things. And so in a perfect world, if I can be like pretty conservative, it doesn't have to go like that much higher than that. But it kind of just depends on like what I'm doing and like what I'm prioritizing. Again, I had like a lot of travel this month and it just blows up a lot
Yeah,
of
travel
my
doesn't help.
monthly. Especially a lot of travel for like weddings and bachelorettes and things like for like friends. And I feel like that's a different type of expenses that come out. For me, in terms of like my actual business on itself. So I've been only doing just my writing coaching since like April. And it ebbs and flows. So it depends. Like there are certain months where I'm net positive and there are certain months where I'm neutral and there are certain months where I'm like net negative. And so anybody who does like entrepreneurship knows like it just sort of depends on like what's going on and how many clients I'm building. I'm still sort of building that business. And so like honestly it's a total roller coaster. It's very different because in the past, like 2 years, I had been doing freelancing. So I was just working with different online communities like Rite of Passage and Small Bets. And I worked with Paul Miller's Pathless Path for a little bit. And so then it was easier to be a little bit more consistent. And one thing I think that's becoming really popular in my like corner of the internet, as I call it, is like they kind of label it as like a portfolio career. And so what's really cool and like something I kind of realized in my sabbatical is that like you don't have to be 100% one thing. So I right now am solely working on my business. I think that could change tomorrow if like somebody I worked with, like I know a couple people who I've worked with in the past who are launching really interesting projects and I loved working with them and I would totally work with them again. I kind of like that I have a little bit of that like incentive to like eat to make my business work because it kind of puts my feet to the fire and I'm like, okay, cool. Like if I'm focused just on this, then like what does it mean to like consistently bring in clients? How much marketing do I need to do? How much work do I have to do on that end? And I also feel like I have the option to, mix and match. And I could also like work full time if I wanted, whether that's like a full-time job or like a barista job where I can like kind of put in my hours and leave at the end of the day and like work on my own projects. So I feel like I have a lot of flexibility, but I also have past Michelle to thank because if I need to, I can like pull from my savings or pull from my stocks and kind of meet that difference month to month.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of being on like the FI journey as well as the creative journey. That FI sort of gives you a bit of a foundation, gives you a bit of a backing and a bit of the confidence to kind of to take that journey. And I like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I liked what you said earlier about how you're less concerned about the RE part, and this is what this like podcast is all about, really. Is like how do you like enjoy your journey on the way? Yeah, I kind of wanted to unpack that on your side because although you're on the FI path, you're kind of designing, building your life, doing these creative things because you enjoy them, and those are probably some of the things you'd probably do if you do get retired, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably still be continuing doing those things.
Yeah. I will say whenever I have like a stressful moment where I'm like, oh, like I need to make money, I need to do this, and I like pause and I think about like what my ideal life would be. I I really feel like right now I'm living my ideal life. Like I live by the beach. I have a lot of friends. I'm close to my family. I'm able to do the things that I want to do. And I find my like business and like working in the writing space to be really exciting. And so I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm living my retired life. I just have to close the gap to finance it. But if I was doing this, and I think I have an appreciation for the fact that these things just constantly evolve. Like I think my writing coaching will lead to my next thing, which will lead to my next thing, which will lead to my next thing. And so I think that's why I don't worry so much about the retirement aspect. It's funny too, like I live in a retirement town, so there's like a lot of people here who like are retired, and like whether they're older or even like some younger people for whatever reason like come into money, like it's a very relaxed vibe. So I feel like I'm like around people who are retired. So I feel like I've luckily gone to a space where I feel like my life is really nice, and I'm just kind of connecting the dots to make it go as long as possible, and also can like cover myself in case of like emergency or things like that. So it's like a nice balance, I think.
Nice, you've done well with the balance. And I kind of wanted to unpack then your creative journey. And I like how you said, you moved from one thing and that's led to another. And I think something I learned from you and Sammie is I think you mentioned before about one of the tips that you gave was like, follow your curiosities, and then that will like kind of lead you to your next thing.
Yeah.
So your creative journey. So when you started, your sabbatical, can you just talk us through your whole creative journey and the milestones on the way, like the big milestones on the way, like the twists and turns? Can you just take us through that journey up to now?
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2021, it's basically the end of 2020, December 2020, I basically lost my job. My sales team, they were cutting people. My boss had gotten fired. And probably like 6 months before my job ended, I was like holding on for dear life. Like I did not think I was going to leave, and I was doing everything I could to stay. And I remember having a meeting with my new boss, who honestly, bless his heart, like he was new to management and also got a team that was just had a lot of different like problems. It was basically on fire. And two guys on my team had left, and I had gone to him and I was like, like, I want you to know I'm not interviewing, like I'm here to stay. I'm going to figure this out. And he like looks at me in my Zoom screen and was like, well, maybe you should be. And I was
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, like, and we had like the most like intense conversation I probably had in my career. And so at that point, I remember just shutting off my laptop and I think crying, because I was just like, oh my gosh, like you think you're going to talk to your manager like that and they're going to be like, okay, awesome, we're going to stay, let's figure something out. And so for him to essentially be like, you should leave, was really jarring for me. And I ended up like talking to my family and people in my life, and they're very positive, which I really appreciate, because I think that's like one of the best characteristics you can have. And I basically ended up deciding that I would like double down and just work harder. So probably like 6 months until I ended up leaving my company, I was like, I'm gonna do the work. Like I'm going to figure out what I need to learn. I'm going to connect with all the right people. And I really saw it pay off in a big way. Like even though I couldn't salvage my job, I started to see like, okay, I can fix myself and I can like be better at all of these things. And I can't control what's happening like with like outside the company. And again, it was COVID, like it was a different time. And so I just had an appreciation for that. And so I say all of that because like during that time, I think that was the first time that I actually felt like challenged in a way in a long time in my career, and just saw how much it paid off. And I started to reflect. I was like, wow, I'm like working really hard. I'm seeing things pay off. And also I'm like doing a lot of this for like software, like pretty like boring software. And I started to think, I was like, man, like what if I put this energy into myself, into my own projects? Like I've always wanted to be creative. What if I like actually channeled this into my own things? And so fast forward, I ended up leaving the company at the end of the year, and I was still in that mindset. But anyone who's been in that stage knows like it's a lot easier to work hard in like an external environment than it is like self-motivating yourself. But luckily, like right off the bat, me and my sister started our podcast. And again, like she's amazing. Sammie is really like structured and like motivated. And she was working like an intense full-time job. Like she was just working constantly at that time. So I ended up taking on a lot of the responsibilities for the podcast. So I'll pause there for a second just for like the backstory of like anybody who is going through a hard time with their work. Like I know there's like a lot of layoffs and a lot of threat with like AI and things like that. But I think the first thing that I really appreciated was how much that actually showed me that I could like show up for myself and like do the thing. And so even though I still had to like find that and figure that out for myself in my creative journey, it was really important for me to like realize that like because you just lose that. Or I think even like some people have the confidence that they can do their job, but they don't have the confidence that they can do their own side project. And I think honestly, like if you have, you know, if you're smart, you're hardworking, even if you're not in an environment that's challenging you right now, you probably do have the capacity as soon as you decide to like take on whatever project that you want to take on.
Nice. So because I know you've when you were doing your sort of podcast, you had some other like side hustles or other sort of projects that kind of led on from there. I know you mentioned earlier about, you know, working with communities. Can you talk us through what other things led you from podcasting? What were those other sort of projects that came out from that?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I love about sharing your work online, whether it's podcasting, writing, even like short form, is that it's a really great vehicle for luck. So I always say like anytime you put something online, you kind of create this lighthouse of luck for yourself, which is then like attracting people to you that are like interested in the things that you're interested in or building your community online. And so that's why I'm like really passionate about things like online writing or like sharing your work online. And so for Sammie and I, we started our podcast. And Greg, you have a podcast. You know, podcasting is probably one of the hardest mediums to actually get people to like listen and follow you. You know, the search is terrible. It's hard for people to find you. It's like very brute force. Like you almost have to like tell everybody to come and listen to your podcast. And there are different ways that it's like a little bit better now. Like YouTube, I think handles podcasts a lot better now and things like that. But I say that because the first year, like nothing happened. Like, yes, we had like friends and stuff listening. We were getting a little bit of positive like momentum, but nothing crazy. Like, you know, you get to the end of your first year of podcasting and we're like, okay, like what has happened? And for us, there wasn't a lot to point to. And then it's crazy to see how things shifted. So a major thing for us was we went to Joe Saul-Sehy's Stacking Benjamin's for his book Stacked. He was doing a book tour. So we drove like 3 hours. We went to his book tour. We're like, hey, we love the podcast. And while he was signing our book, we were like, hey, like we actually have a podcast too. And he was like, amazing, like send it to me and I would love to take a listen. And essentially, he saw that we had like 70 episodes at the time. And he's like, oh, like you guys have been doing this. He gave us like a little bit of advice and it was really awesome. A few months later, him and Jordan from Earn and Invest were looking for people to mentor. And we applied and they ended up helping us with our podcast. So we worked with them for a year. We had so many cool opportunities come from that. We spoke at Camp Fi. We got to go to different events and it really helped us like also hone our craft. And so I say that because like even in that alone, it was so crazy to see how just by existing, we were able to get these opportunities because I think it showed them that we were actually like happy and willing to like consistently show up because most podcasts, they say like stop after 7 episodes. So that was the first thing I think where we actually like, were like, wow, okay, cool. Like something's come out of this. About, I think 2 years after we started our podcast, I took a writing course and I started writing online. And again, writing compared to podcasting, it was just allowed so many more people to find me. And I had a lot more confidence because I'd already been showing up weekly on my podcast and just knew a lot of the things like you have to tell people about it. You have to like self-promote. You have to show up consistently. And so that was really awesome because I was just sort of writing different essays and I started tweeting and people started to ask me more about taking time off work and sabbaticals. And so suddenly everybody was asking me about sabbaticals, like this thing that to me, I had just called it a sabbatical because I quit my job and I was sick of people trying to help me find another job. So I was like, yeah, like I'm taking a sabbatical right now. And that's when I really got involved with people in terms of talking to people. I ended up holding my own course with a friend, meeting people like Paul Millard in the Pathless Path space, because I was just writing and talking about taking time off work. I also ended up working for the writing school that I had taken the class from. And I think a lot of that too was because I had a lot of prior creative experience because I had been doing my podcast. I was really good at being consistent. I was just like learning constantly and like adjusting and being able to apply one thing to the other. And then I worked with the small bets community. I worked with Pathless Path because Paul Millard was like, "Oh, I noticed that you, I started working with small bets. Like, I would love to help you while I'm on paternity leave." And so it's a lot of different things, but basically the core thing is that sharing my stuff online ended up leading to so many different opportunities that I had no idea would come. And I think that's why I have so much faith now that one thing will come from the other, because I just have a lot of kind of irons in the fire, even if I'm not working on it anymore. Like after 4 years, we ended our podcast, but Greg, you invited, me on the show because you were a fan of that show. And that's just cool to see because there's nothing lost by doing all of that work.
I love it. That journey is just amazing. I love the whole concept of the lighthouse, putting it out there, and that's how you kind of let these opportunities kind of domino effect on your way, and that these sort of interesting things came out because of you were being consistent, you were putting yourself out there, as you said. And what were the kind of like challenges or pitfalls? Because I'm just thinking, if someone's listening to this thinking, oh wow, this, I'm really inspired, like someone's in work, they're doing corporate work, and you must get this kind of a lot. They're in the corporate sort of thing, and they're kind of thinking about, oh, I'd love to do something different, and maybe something creative, and it sounds really cool. What are the kind of challenges throughout that, what is it, the last 4 or 5 years? What kind of the keys or challenges that come up that you can think of that others might not know about because they haven't not been on that journey?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing can be summarized by the fact that you have to have courage and you have to put yourself out there before you see any results, usually for quite a while. It's hard to, just go viral immediately and everything pans out, whether that's writing content or writing essays or podcasting or even launching a product. There's just a lot of work that goes into getting exposure and having people see and find your different things, specifically for entrepreneurship. And so I would say don't lose faith during that journey, because a lot of times things do pay off. You just don't know how it will pay off, usually for another year or 2 years. Like I said, like the first year after we did our podcast, we were putting a lot of time and effort into it and a little bit of money, not like a ton, but to pay for hosting and those type of things. And I remember having a conversation with Sammie, and she was kind of looking at it and she's like, well, what are we doing? We've been doing this for a year. Like, what do we have to show for it? And it was I think it was a big moment for us because it wasn't like, it made a ton of money. I don't think the podcast ever really made us money. It did lead to a lot of opportunities in the end, but at that moment, we really had to like think about what our priorities were because we were putting so much time into it. And for us, a big thing was like the impact. Like we really liked the people in our community, even if it was just people that we knew, were making better financial decisions. Like we had friends who were like, I'm going to start budgeting now. They finally got exposed to financial independence, those type of things. So it was definitely really nice to like make that impact. And that was sort of something moving forward. We were like, that's going to be our focus. We want to, as long as we feel like we're like giving back and we're enjoying this process, and that's what matters most. But it's definitely a roller coaster because you have those highs, like you'll have a win and feel like, top of the world, like, okay, I got this thing, I'm getting paid to do something I like. And then, 6 months later that you can't feed off that win anymore. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, especially if you end up taking time off work. Like I always say, like a sabbatical doesn't solve your problems. It just gives you more time to sit with them. And yeah, I see you nodding. It's like so true. It's like I think it's a good thing. Like I think it's good to work through those things that you haven't honestly had a chance to work through, because a lot of times we're just working constantly or we're on life mode constantly. But you do have to like face your own internal demons a lot.
And you mentioned like Doc G previously. I know he's got a book, Purpose Code, and he talks like little P purpose. There's like the big P, which is obviously the big massive goals, fly to the moon or whatever it is. And then there's like the small P ones, which is like enjoying the process, the smaller ones, the ones that the kind of the everyday ones. So in your perspective, Michelle, like you doing these kind of like passion projects, would you say these are ticking these kind of like small P purpose type things? Like, is that right to say, or are you still trying to find your way, or where do you sit on the purpose sort of ladder or purpose sort of path?
Yeah, I love that book. I think he really hit the nail on the head with what you just described. We were lucky to have him on the podcast back in January when he was releasing the book, and he really put words to something that I think I found in my own like FI journey and my own sabbatical journey, which is at the end of the day, the big P purpose is not hitting your FI number. The big P purpose, a lot of times, I think people, especially again, like in these spaces, have in some ways hit their big P purpose. Like they got the job that they thought they were working through for their whole life. They got the paycheck that they wanted, that they've been working towards their whole life. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like hard to sustain you long term. And I would say that I do feel like the things I do check the boxes more for the little P purpose. Like with writing coaching, I really love working one-on-one with people who are writing. I really love to be able to share what I've learned and to be able to learn and feel inspired by the people that I'm working with. And I'm happy to keep doing that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this like big, huge impact thing. It can just be something that I enjoy and I'm happy to do day to day. And I think finding those little P purpose things that make you happy and make you feel fulfilled are so important on this journey. At the end of the day, it's not really about what pays you at all. It could be like, I think an example in his book is like collecting baseball cards and like creating a space for people and kids to do those type of things. And so, yeah, I would definitely say that I feel a lot closer to checking those boxes. And I think now I'm much more cognizant about how I spend my time, my money, and my energy. And I always want to make sure it's aligned with things that are important to me.
Awesome. And a lot of the things I think about is when we're kind of on that journey and we're hitting like these sort of purpose tick boxes. And sometimes I think a lot of it's also to do with like doing things that align with like our skill sets and what we like naturally really good at. And I wanted to kind of get onto like, because I know you guys talk about sparketypes as well. So I've got it here actually. So I've got your sparketypes, which is basically some of the key things that you're really, really good at naturally. And
Yeah.
I've got you down to, I've got two here. So one is performer. So correct me if these are wrong. One's a performer,
that's right.
and then one's a maven. So meaning you really love learning, the maven part, and the performing part, you're in, you like performing in some way. Where do these two kind of show up in like what you do now? Are they still correct?
Yeah. I love that you have those. First off, Sammie and I love personality quizzes. Like if you follow the podcast over 4 years, we cover all of our favorites, and Sparketypes is a really fun one by Jonathan Fields. I highly recommend taking that quiz. And he basically, a Sparketype is the type of work that makes you come alive. So sometimes you might be good at something, but it actually like drains you. And for me, performer is somebody who likes to bring delight into any moment, who sort of is more interested in like working with people and kind of showing up in those type of ways. And a maven is somebody who like loves to learn. So mine is perfect. Like when I was working with communities, it was amazing because a lot of times I got to help facilitate like online Zoom rooms and got the opportunity to both basically learn, because a lot of the communities I'm in are focused on teaching or having guest speakers. And I also had the opportunity to get to present that information. Like podcasting is like great for a person who's like a performer, or writing. Those are all really great outlets for me, because I love to, entertain and love to, just bring like small delights, whether it's with my friends or online on the internet. Like those are the things that I really enjoy. So I'm like definitely aligned to those things. I am curious if they've changed, because you're right. I probably took the quiz maybe again like 2 or 3 years ago. I think Maven will always be there, just because I definitely have a deep love of learning. And I think Performer is there as well, but I think I've kind of come to appreciate the more background role. Like I don't necessarily feel like I have to be like front and center when it comes to things like coaching. I really enjoy like the one-on-one, and like being able to like focus on the other person and their goals and what they want to accomplish, and like celebrating their wins. So I think it's still there, but it's kind of morphed into how it shows up for me every day. Do you know what yours are? Have you done the Sparketype quiz?
Yeah. I've done it. Yeah. So the first one is a maker. So I'm driven to like create, and which is like, definitely up there. I do like to do like creative things.
Yeah, you got this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. The other one is advisor. So driven. That's kind of surprised me a bit. So it's like you're driven to guide people. So I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
I think it also lines up with this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Can you remember what your anti one was? There's like an anti-Sparky type, isn't it? It's like the one that you really don't like to do at all. Like, can you remember what that was for you?
Mine is essentialist. So basically somebody who likes to turn chaos into systems and organize. And Sammie, my sister, is her main is an essentialist. She's an essentialist maven, a maven essentialist. And so it's great, because when we were working together,
perfect combination.
Yeah. So it was funny, I think, after we did the Sparketype quiz, because she was working like, again, full-time plus at that point. So I was doing a lot of the administrative work with the podcast. And so she would just show up, and we try to make it as easy as possible for her to like come. We'd outline together, and she could basically just show up on the podcast. And so we would kind of realize, I was like, oh, our roles are a bit reversed, because she's the essentialist. So in theory, she would excel at the organization process, and I would, excel at just showing up and, being great. And I think that was like a helpful realization, because there was nothing to change at that moment. But I think it was like, okay, cool. Like we're not necessarily in our zone of genius all the time, and you can't necessarily be. For me, for example, like in entrepreneurship, it's helpful to know that I'm not an essentialist, because like I had to create all these systems for myself so that I would make sure I get to my student drafts on time, make sure I invoice people on time, make sure I, pay my taxes, those type of things. And I'm like, I hate all of those things. I don't mind following a system, but like creating it makes me want to like cross my eyes. And so I was like, okay, we just have to like get this done. Like this part isn't fun for you, but that's okay. We can get through it. And I think just knowing that helps, because otherwise I would beat myself up for like, I'd be like, I'm not organized, I'm not good at this stuff. And those are the type of things that are so valued in a workplace. If you're an essentialist, you will always have a job. That is one thing that I realized.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's my anti.
Nice one. So you mentioned one of the things that you love doing is obviously the writing and being a writing coach. And I've got to say, your writing is top. Not like your writing is awesome. Like I love reading your Substack and your essays. They're just so engaging, and they're just like really cool.
Thank you. So wow, I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's super sweet.
Just on the writing then, so I know you touched on it earlier about being a writer coach. I wanted to kind of dive into like, your writing coaching and how that works. So for someone that's thinking about, like, maybe there's a listener here like, oh, this sounds really cool, like maybe doing like writing on the side. I'd love to like maybe take up Michelle as one of my coach. What would someone going into your coaching, like what would they kind of get out of it? Or could you maybe take us through like an outline, rough process of what they would go through, just to give them a bit of a taste of, what the coaching entails?
Yeah. So I'll break that into two parts. One, without a coach, like if you're interested in writing online, I would say just do it. And publish. So I would maybe choose a deadline for yourself, whether it's in a week, 3 weeks, a month, probably no further out than that. Write an essay, go back and revise it. It's the revising part that gets people, like the editing. Go back, edit it, make it good enough, and publish it. Because it's so, that like first step is the hardest step. And honestly, one that I can't even necessarily help people with. Like a lot of people I work with have at least published something. And I think I prefer that just because I know how hard it is to start. Because everything comes up. It's like I have kids, I have work, I have 10 different things. I'm on vacation this week, and that's totally fine. It's like, again, back to the start finishing book with Gilkey. Maybe you just have too many projects right now, but I think if it's something that you're really excited about, that idea, definitely go on something like Substack. They make it really easy. Push your first article out. The good and bad is like nobody will read it because it's just really hard to build traction at first, but it will be the first step into like building an audience and finding readers and all those things. But I think it's so satisfying to actually publish your first thing. It took me like 2 years before I like published anything online versus when I was like, I'm gonna do this. So just get started. That's free. Don't need to hire me for that. Like I think that's just such a key thing. And honestly, from there, if you show up again the next week or you show up in 2 weeks and you just can be consistent, it'll do so much for you. So showing up, hitting publish, that's the first and foremost, the big thing. Ideally, you will grow as a writer, right? So you don't have to have the perfect first essay. Then when people tend to work with me, it's really cool because we get to partner together with what their goals are. So a lot of people that I partner with, they enjoy the writing and to some extent do want accountability, like have somebody to help them show up every single week. And I think working with somebody helps in that capacity. But they also want to improve their craft. So a big part of it is I often will get essays from my students. Like once a week, they'll send me an essay. I'll actually go in, I'll edit it. I as an editor, I did like hundreds of essays when I was with Rite of Passage. And so I sort of bring that eye to the different pieces. Like, how can we make this more personal, more vulnerable, more sometimes observational, more fun, more playful? And I try to give both constructive feedback and positive feedback because a lot of times we're very critical on ourselves. And so it's good to be like, hey, this is actually interesting and engaging, or this I think is the main point that I'd love for you to expand on. And so that's one part of it. And then I also try to help people lean into distributing their work online and like building their audience. Because what a lot of people say is, we go online, we share our essay for the first time, and they're like, oh, I don't even care if anybody reads it. Like, I just want to like share it, and like, I don't care if anybody reads it. And I think that was true for me. You're kind of like, oh, it's fine, I'm just doing this. But once you start publishing, it's happened with our podcast too. Like at first I was like shy, I didn't want to share it with anybody. And luckily Sammie was like texting it to everybody because she's the only person I wrote who does not have the same fear. But you start to realize, like, no, I do want people to read it. Like, it would be nice. Like, I put all this time and effort into this. I would love it if I could find like-minded people who engage with my work. And so the problem with that is a lot of people feel really icky about sharing their work or distributing it or sharing it on Twitter or Substack or Instagram or wherever it is that people want to share it. And so we work through that process too, like how to be strategic. And a lot of times it's me being like, have you like shared this with anybody? Have you put this on notes? Have you, told your family? And we work with what their goals are too. So I would say those are the 3 things I help out with the most: is accountability, like helping people show up consistently, helping them edit, improve their craft, because that's obviously a really big thing that's important to people, and then also helping them distribute their work and like build an audience with different strategies.
Awesome. And when someone's kind of like writing, let's say, the personal essays, is there like a sort of bit of a framework to choose a topic? Like, how does someone think of, oh yeah, let's go with this one? And is there like a bit of a framework you use, like, or I'm just curious about how that process of choosing, what to write about?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, when I was onboarding my first few coaching students, I'd ask them, like, what's your fear? And a few of them, I was surprised. They're like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to run out of ideas. And we have never run out of ideas. Nobody has ever run out of ideas. So, first and foremost, like, you have ideas. I think the best piece of advice I can give globally on that thing is go with the idea that's most exciting to you at this moment. So if you find you go to the grocery store, you're chatting with the cashier, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have a lot to say on this topic, go home and write a draft. Because the muse is there, the excitement is there, hit while it's hot. That's what I would say. And maybe it feels small to you, maybe it feels big to you, maybe it feels irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, go with the thing that's most exciting to you, because it's that momentum that you need to move forward. So I would say, like, when it comes to your ideas, go with the thing that is most exciting to you. And then I will put a second tip on top of that, which is you're probably going to tackle something that actually could be 10 essays. So once you have your idea, and if you're writing it, it's like 5 pages long, which is too much for an online post. I would just think, like, okay, like, how can I actually, like, converge on this idea and really focus on, like, one part of this? Like, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. So for example, I want to write a piece about quitting drinking. And, 5 years ago, I quit drinking, and that's a huge topic. There's a lot to say. And so I felt overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God. I made the mistake of, like, asking my audience. I was like, what do people want to hear about? And 10 people said 10 different things. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I cannot, this is too much. And so instead I'm like, okay, what can I talk about? I can talk about the social aspects of quitting drinking. I can talk about the physical aspects. I can talk about the things that I learned. I could just make a list of the top 10 things. And so that, I think, is the process to go through. Is chances are you're going to bite off a huge essay that could be 10 essays. And you just have to be like, okay, I can write the other 9 later. What is the one essay I want to talk about right now?
Love it. Yeah, it's really good to just understand. I was just always curious about that.
Yeah. I feel like if you do those things, you're good to go. If you're self-motivated and you apply that, like, that'll get you, like, well into your, online writing, publishing journey.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And we're gonna head over to the quick fire round, Michelle. But before you do that, was there anything else that maybe there was something you wanted to talk about, or maybe there was something you wanted me to ask, but I didn't get to, or you didn't get to say? Was there anything that you'd like to throw in?
I'll just share.
Generally.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to so many people who've taken time off work, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because, say, they lost their job or got laid off. And I think it's one of those things that if it's something that you're considering, if you've prepared yourself relatively well financially for it, which is a whole side conversation on what that looks like. It's really just based off your own risk aversion. But if it's something that you're thinking about, and chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are on pace to, probably could take a sabbatical. I would definitely say go for it. Like, it seems so scary, and I think we can overthink it so much. Like, I have to have a plan. I have to do all of these things. How long is it going to be? And I think it's really one of those things where, they say, like, leap and the net will appear. And so I think whether it's a sabbatical or your creative journey, it's really about, like, getting in there, taking action and doing it, because that's when you'll actually see, like, what are the things that come up, what are the good, the bad, the ugly, like, what are the things that you end up, like, dealing with. And because you can't think your way like, into a sabbatical. It's just one of those things that you sort of just have to go and take action and do.
Great words of wisdom. Thank you, Michelle. All right, Michelle. Well, we're going to head over to the quick fire question round. So I've got 5 questions for you, and we'll just jump straight in. And the first one is, what's something you wish you'd done 10 years ago?
I wish I started my creative journey sooner.
Nice.
One thing you'll see in this space is, as soon as you start, you'll feel like you started too late. And then you'll realize that you haven't. It's never too late. There's always so many things, like, changing and growing. But I had such a strong interest in writing online and doing different things, and was avoiding it for a lot of different reasons. And so I wish if I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy with the way my life turned out, but I do wish I had just done it and stuck to it, because I'd be 10 years further in my journey.
Awesome. All right, question number 2. What are 1 or 2 daily habits that have helped you on your journey?
It's not daily, but I do exercise pretty consistently now. It ebbs and flows depending on what I'm doing, but at least like a couple times a week. And I think they say, at least Sammie says this, and I'm sure she pulled it from somewhere, but I don't know where, that exercise is like a keystone habit. And so it's just one of those things that is always a metaphor for everything else. Like, oh, like if you're showing up to the gym every day and lifting weights, you'll build muscle. And that's the same as if you're writing. But I think something about actually doing it, that kind of clicks a little bit more. And it's a little bit easier depending on like your state to do those things. And so good for your health, obviously. But I think finding something you're interested in, like I'm lifting now, but I love yoga. I love spin. And I was not always like this. I was somebody who like never exercised at one point. But something about it, whenever I'm like being consistent in my exercise, for whatever reason, it helps me lock in other parts of my life. So I would say I would give that as my answer. That's like a big one. And the other one I would say actually is, if you can control it, getting good sleep is so important. Like whatever that is to you, I think we're so much more sleep deprived than we realize. I definitely was. And I like now have the luxury of being able to control my schedule. But even if you don't, like my sister's a morning person, she'll like sleep super early now. I'm a night person, but I still try to like not entertain that too much. So like I'll go to bed earlier, so that I can just good sleep. Because I think probably a key thing here is like take care of your health first, because that is the foundation for anything else you're going to be doing.
Agreed, 100%. Okay, question number 3. What's your most important lesson in life?
Ooh, Greg, this one might not surprise you, because I think you referenced it when you had reached out. But action changes things is definitely the big one. It's so annoying because anytime I'm stuck, anytime I'm upset, anytime something is going on that's like a blocker in my life, I'm lucky to have my sister, because Sammie's always like, action changes things. And it's so true. It's like there's usually a step that needs to be taken, and I'm trying to think my way out of it. And in reality, just taking action is one of the best things that you can do. And so I think that's the best piece of advice I've got, is action changes things.
Yeah, 110% agree. All right, question number 4. What are 2 or 3 transformational books you can recommend to the audience? Or it doesn't have to be books, maybe other artistic media, podcasts, movies, or anything of that sort.
There's so many. And I will say, sometimes it's less about the book and more about the timing. Because I read so many personal development books during my sabbatical, both because we talked about it on the podcast, but also just because I was in that place in my life, and I love it so much. For me, we talked about Start Finishing by Charlie Gilkey. That was really huge for me because it just helped me organize my life. And I think he gives really great practical tips in terms of how you can go and basically cut down your wish list to actually get things done. So Start Finishing by Charlie Gilkey is a big one. And I was a big fan of The Alchemist. I loved it. It's fiction. It's short. It's one of those books that I don't know, like when you start reading it, I didn't necessarily think it would be that life-changing, but I just love the repeated narrative of the universe is conspiring to help you, because I've just more and more come to believe that like if you have that mentality, basically, a lot of times it's so true. Like you'll just be surprised by the things that feel like luck, and also feel like, wow, I kind of was brave enough to say I wanted this thing, and now the universe is actually helping me get to that place in ways that I would never have imagined. So I would say The Alchemist is my second one.
Okay, and the last one. What are one or two small things listeners can do this week if they kind of wanted to get to where you are right now and on this creative journey? What one or two small things they could just do this week?
Quit your job. Just kidding. One or two small things. I recommend if you're somebody who has a list rattling on in your brain about all of these different things that you want to do, go through this exercise that's in start finishing, which is like write it all down, which is like for me at the time, it was I want to write, I want to do this podcast, I want to travel to Japan and South America, and I want to also buy these gifts for my friends and visit them for their wedding, and I want to start a YouTube channel, and I want to learn how to knit. Like write it all down just so you can also see like how many things you're carrying, and then actually like go cross out things on the list and narrow it down to the 3 to 5 projects that you're focused on right now. And it might be that you're in a season where you're like, okay, I have to focus on my work, my family, and like getting sleep. Or you might be like, okay, I actually, this creative project is really exciting and important to me. I really want to start writing on Substack. I'm going to make that my priority for this quarter. So I would recommend doing that exercise.
Awesome tips. All right, Michelle. Thank you very much for answering the quickfire question round.
Those are great questions.
Yeah, they're the same questions I asked, and those are just some really curious questions for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Michelle, was there anywhere any plugs or anything you'd like to send the listeners, or if anyone wants to get in touch?
Yeah.
Please take the floor.
I think the easiest way to find me, I have a website, michelleelizabethvarghese.com. And so that links to my Twitter, my Substack, basically whatever project I'm working on right now, my writing coaching. If you're listening to this when it comes out, I'm actually starting like a Better Writer Challenge for the next 6 months. So I'm going to take not only like the people that I'm coaching with, but I want to form like a little community that's really focused on a bit of an intensive, like I'm going to write consistently and also share my work consistently. And I think it'll be really cool. The goal is to get some people who are just really excited about being in like a bit of a intimate writer community and like get some momentum with moving forward. Because I think what I found for myself is it's so helpful to have that encouragement. And I'm intentionally choosing like a 6-month journey because I want it to be a little bit intense. Like 6 months, it's hard to do anything for 6 months, and so I think it'll be cool. So if you're listening to this when it comes out, you can learn more about that on my website and on my different resources as well. I'll be sharing more about that across the board.
Awesome, and I could definitely vouch for the writing, the outcomes that that Michelle puts out there. They're really brilliant. So yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Before you jump off, and I hope you have like another minute, I've got a bonus question I wanted to ask you. On your Substack, you've got an interesting article called "Rearranged Marriages." I don't know if I'm sure people you get asked this before.
Yeah.
So you talk about modern day like arranged marriages. I think you and a group of friends of yours, you negotiated a bit of a deal, and they said they were going to find you a partner or a hubby by I think you gave them a deadline, or you agreed on a deadline.
Yeah, at the time it was like a year.
What happened with that? Was it?
I really need to write a follow-up essay for that. I had so many times where I thought I would, and the thing is, life keeps changing. So I was like, oh, I'll write about it at this moment, and then things didn't pan out the way it does. I am dating someone really great now who,
amazing.
In theory, we met in person, but actually some of my friends online had recommended him, not online, sorry, in person, a few months before that, because I was just asking them about whether they knew anybody who was single. Since I wrote that essay, I was sort of putting myself out there more. But to be honest, like I think the funniest part about that is like those were my close friends when I was in the Bay Area, and I would ask like I think we talked about it maybe on my podcast at one point, because there's a point where like many people like send me people, and I was living in this remote desert. And I will say, like, I was surprised at how not helpful it was. I got a lot of bad options. Not that the people were like bad necessarily, but, like nobody would follow through. Like, but one thing I loved about it was I felt like I got to outsource my dating problems, because I would be like, okay, cool. Like if your friend, if you have a single friend, like tell them to reach out. And they like wouldn't reach out. And then I'd be like, okay, just so you know, I haven't heard from this person. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they didn't reach out, blah, blah. And I'm like, like I don't care. But I'm glad that now you would worry about that, where in the past I would worry about that. But yeah, I would say last year I took much more of a control over my dating life, which I think was probably, now that we're talking about it, I think that was actually the real takeaway, was because at that time I was living in a small town. I didn't really have I didn't want to date anybody there. Just because I also didn't want to stay in that town. But once I like moved and like settled, I was like, okay, I need to like take control of my life. So the irony, I think, is that the takeaway really is not that you should let your friends know that you're looking for somebody, but I think unfortunately you still have to do a lot of the legwork yourself, or at least that was my case. But it was one of my favorite essays that I've written, like probably like top 2. So yeah, if it sounds interesting, I definitely highly recommend anyone going and reading it. And if you do read it, like let me know, leave a comment.
It was a fun one. Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Michelle. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. And yeah, hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, it was such a joy to be here, Craig. Thank you so much. It was a really great experience. And if anyone is listening and if there's anything that stood out to you, like I love hearing back from people. So you can always like leave a comment on my writing, or I feel like my emails in different places, tweet at me. I always love hearing what like stood out to people. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Greg. Take care.